What does that even mean, Bowers Game Corner?
Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again today for another game review. And today I'm very excited to check it out For the Birds from Breaking Games. This is for 2 to 6 players, ages 8 plus. Will take about 20 to 30 minutes to play. And For the Birds is an abstract strategy game that's kind of like a gamery version of Connect 4. You're going to be rolling dice, placing your birds onto a board, playing special ability cards, manipulating crows and hawks to get into the positions that you want them to be in, displacing other birds, and doing other things such as that, in the ultimate goal of getting a Connect 4 or 4 birds in a square. It goes up to 6, but doesn't play it well. Let's open it up. I'll tell you what I think about it. Alright then, we're going to take a look at what you're going to get inside of For the Birds. First and foremost, we're going to handy dandy rule sheet, 1 page, double-sided. This back part is all special thanks, credits, and Kickstarter backers. So really all you're going to be getting is this right here. No pictures, no illustrations, no color, and not very well done. It's way more confusing than it needs to be. It doesn't even mention what you do with these tokens here, and it's just not a well done rule booklet at all. They knew this, and they actually released this new rule booklet right here, which is 7-page, double-sided, full color, full of pictures, illustrations, notes, card reference. Huge thumbs up on this rule booklet. If you have a choice, obviously get this one. However, if you only have this rule booklet, I would recommend going to Board Game Geek and seeing if you can get a PDF of this or print it off or something like that. It will save you 5-10 minutes of confusion trying to figure out how to play the game, which is always a nice thing. Also to tell you how to use these tokens, as will I in a couple minutes. So, in For the Birds, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be rolling 2 dice, and you are going to be placing birds out on the board. So, that's a bad roll, so let's do that. So, I have a 7 and an 8, which means I can either place my bird, my own specific color bird, yeah, they're nice 3D little birds, on either the 78 or on the 87. So, boom, I might place it on the 87 right there, and that would be my turn. Now, if I don't want to play my bird on the 78 or the 87, or maybe I can't play my bird on the 78 or 87 because other birds are already there, then I can play one of these 6 magical cards right here. And these 6 cards, everyone will have the same 6 cards. They will let you do fancy things. Move 2 of your birds each 1 space. Move 1 of your birds 1 or 2 spaces. Reroll 1 or both die. Move opponent's birds 1 or 2 space. Place a or move a crow to any space on the tree. They're going to let you do fancy things. However, once you use them, you can't get them back into your hand without rolling doubles. So you don't have the power to get them back in your hand. It is all if you're going to get lucky enough to roll doubles. But I'll show you a little bit more about how that works later. So that's what you're going to be doing on your turn. You're going to be rolling dice, and then you're going to be placing birds or placing cards. Now, what are you trying to do? Well, the object of the game is to get a Connect 4. So like your typical game of Connect 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So you're trying to get 4 of your color in a row or 4 in a square like this. If you can do that, then you have immediately won the game. Good for you. However, it's not going to be that easy because everyone else is going to be trying to place their colors on the board, so they're going to be blocking you. Also, other people, one other person at the table is going to be able to knock you out of a position. Now, I mentioned earlier that maybe 78 was what I rolled. So let's just pretend that green also rolled a 7 and an 8. Well, if green is to my right, then they have what's called pecking order over me, which means they could, boom, take this spot and bump me 1 spot out of the way. It's called the pecking order, and essentially you are going to have pecking order over 1 person at the table. So you will have the ability to bump 1 person's color at the table out of the way and put your bird there. But the game gets even more difficult because there's 2 other kinds of birds, 2 kind of NPC birds that will be roaming around the table. They're not really NPC because people at the table will be playing them. Those are going to be crows and hawks. Now, crows are just like regular birds, except they have pecking order over everyone. So that's all you need to know about them. They're just like a regular bird, but they have pecking order over everyone. So if they land somewhere, they will knock someone out of place. Hawks, on the other hand, these are the big baddies, and they don't actually land on regular spaces. They land on these red spots in the middle right here. And when they land there, they send all 4 of the birds that are surrounding them, they send them off. And so if someone places a hawk near you, that means that you are going to have to move your pieces at least 1 spot away from the hawk. You're going to have to displace your workers. Now, this can also be used in a strategic manner, but I'll talk more about the strategy of this game when we get to the pros and the cons. When you first start the game, you are going to be setting out some birds. You're going to set out the birds, you're going to roll the dice to see where you're going to set out the birds, and they'll just be randomly set up around the board. You also set out one hawk, just boop, we'll just put him right here for now. You are then going to decide which of the 2 dice you're going to be using. You're going to be using the 10-sided die if you're playing with more players, and you're going to be using the 8-sided die if you're playing with less players, so you have less space to play with less players, which makes sense. And then on your turn, let's just go over what you're going to do. So you're going to roll the dice, and then you're going to place your birds. Now, these are your typical D10 dies, except for the brown die has a hawk on it, and the black die has a crow on it. And when those pop up, you are now going to be placing one of those. So let's just say we have this. We have a 9, and we have a hawk, or a crow, excuse me. What that means is we get to place the crow on the board, and we have to place it on a spot that has a 9. So we can either place it over here on the 9 row, whoa, bump the camera, or up here on the 9 row. So we know very easily that we're going to have to place it somewhere over here. So we're going to use this to our strategic advantage, maybe to block somebody else, maybe to bump us into a more advantageous spot, but that would be what we would do on our turn. Normally, though, you're going to be placing your birds on the board, as I mentioned, with the goal of getting a Connect 4. Now let's go back to those special ability cards, because as I mentioned, if you don't want to place a bird on your turn, you can always play a special ability card. So let's go through what they do. Place or move a crow to any space on the tree. This one can be really useful because it can bump you into a different spot. It can block other people. It can bump other people out of your way. Do lots of different things like that. Remove or move a hawk in the tree. So this one is a great one to get a hawk out of your way, or moving a hawk, which can be incredibly effective. You know, if somebody's getting close to getting a Connect 4 or something like that, you can just be like, boom, no more. Move all your pieces. Flock, move 2 of your birds, 1 space each. Can be very, very useful. It's won me a couple games. Swoop, move 1 of your birds, 1 or 2 spaces. Not as useful, but still pretty useful. You can move something 2 spaces. Reroll, reroll 1 or both dice, which you'll use. And pack, move opponent's birds 1 or 2 spaces. So those are the 6 special abilities. Now, the only way you're ever going to get these special ability cards back when you use them, because you do put them down in front of you to show that they've been used, is you have to roll doubles. If you roll doubles, then you get to get one of your cards back, in addition to placing a bird on that spot. Now, what happens when you run out of cards? Well, that's where these tokens come into play. So if you're out of cards completely, and you roll the dice and you don't want to place a bird or move one of your birds, because once you have all your birds onto the board, you can just move them instead of placing them. You can place a token on that spot, and this completely becomes a dead area, which means, yes, no one can play there. So this is like a permanent stopgap for a different spot. It really doesn't come into the game too terribly often because most of the time people don't use all their cards, but I guess it could happen. But anywho, you're going to continue to play until someone gets 4 in a row or four birds in a square, at which point they will be the winner of For the Birds. And that, in a nutshell, is how the game is played. Alrighty then, For the Birds from Breaking Games. What are my final thoughts? Let's go over the pros, let's go over the cons. First, on the con side, this rule booklet is bad. This rule sheet it's way more confusing than it needs to be, and as I mentioned in the middle part, go print this one off or get a PDF of this one. So, but this is why Kickstarters get a bad rap a lot, because of crap like this. Come on, step it up. But moving on to the gameplay itself, it's an abstracted game. You know, it's not completely abstract strategy game because they do really try and cram the bird theme in there, and that comes across every once in a while. But for the most part, it is an abstracted game, which will be a turnoff to some people. And as with most abstracted game, once you get to the higher player counts, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do what you want to do, because 5 other people are going to take turns in between you taking turns, so the board can completely change, especially once those hawks and crows start coming into play and moving all around the board. So that'll be a turnoff to some people. Now, another comment a lot of people had for this game is that you don't have as much control as you would like in this game. You really have to use your cards, figure out what your cards are, and then use them. But that brings in a serious luck element to the game, because once you start using these cards, you don't get them back unless you roll doubles. So that's completely luck-based, and that's a turnoff to a couple of the people in my game group, which is another thing. I busted this out in my game group, I think, 3 separate times, and it was about a 50-50 split each time. Now, some people just didn't like how much control they felt like they didn't have in this game, which is unusual, because in most abstract strategy games, like, you have a lot of control over what you're doing, but not so much in this game with the dice rolling. So that is something that I did want to mention. Any other cons that I have with this game? I think it's going to be a little bit too light for some game groups. That's really a try before or your mileage may vary kind of thing. You know, it's designed more as a lighter filler game at the 20 to 30 minute mark, which is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Moving on to the pros, though, I really did enjoy For the Birds, and this is one that's going to go on my shelf, and I think it's going to stay on my shelf. I feel like this is one of those games that, like, 5 years from now, I'm going to be like, really, that one's still on my shelf? And I'll be like, yeah, because it fits into different situations. It's a lightweight filler game that I personally enjoy. I really do enjoy the game, and it has a deceptively large amount of strategy. Like, you roll the dice and you got the cards, you're like, oh yeah, this is all just random, what I roll in the dice. And to a certain extent, if you roll poorly the entire game, that is true. However, where the real game comes into play is with these cards. Using these cards at the right time and strategic times is huge. Where you place the crows, where you place the hawks, that's huge. And I like that aspect of the game. I like the fact that while, yes, it is, I feel like it's just gamery enough to keep me coming back for more. It's a fantastic lightweight family game. So if you're looking at this as a family game perspective, I would highly recommend it. It's great. Big thumbs up on that. I played this at a family get-together, which they're not huge gamers, but they actually really, really enjoyed it. It was just like, oh, it's just like a little bit more tricky Connect 4. That's how I pitched it, but they had a lot of fun with it. As for being a game night game, yes, but I already mentioned this part. It's a little bit lighter than some people are going to like. Personally, for me, I like it as a light game night filler. So filler game, family game, potentially even a gateway game. Yeah, I think you could definitely pull this one off as well. So it's a little bit of a chameleon game. You're going to have different situations where you'll be able to bust this game out. The components look really good. I mean, there's 3D birds, completely unnecessary, but awesome. I'm a big fan of that. The new rule booklet, very well done. The box is nice. I like the artwork. I like how the graphic design on the board is done. I really think that's very well done. They have what you can do on your turn, and then around the outside, they have the different cards in your hand and what they do, which I think is great. So you can kind of look at that and be like, oh yeah, I can do that with this card in my hand. So it's just a constant reminder of what you can do. So I like a lot about this game. If you can get past that poor rule booklet, and if you think you're going to be able to get this out with your game group, I can definitely recommend For the Birds, or of course, unless you're looking for this as a family game, which, yeah, I already said, glowing recommendation. So For the Birds, it's got some flaws. Mostly this crappy rule booklet. But if you can get past that, I think this is a rock-solid family / lightweight filler game. Plays up to 6, even though I think 3 to 5 is probably my favorite player count. But still, fun game, one I can recommend going to check out. That is For the Birds from Breaking Games. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to click on that subscribe button down below in the comments below. Let me know. Pink Eye, have you ever had it? How much do you hate it? For me personally, you know what? I used to really hate pink eye when I was younger, and now I see it as an excuse to get out of work for 2 days, so I don't hate it nearly as much. Right now I'm actually home from work because my son has pink eye, and it's like, hey, yeah, I'm home from work. Granted, I don't get paid for that, but still, not being at work, that's pretty awesome. Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on pink eye? And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube.